Guys, I have said it before and I will say it again. People love to romanticize the Appalachian Trail. You dream about the beautiful hiking, the mind-blowing vistas, and you glamorize the idea of some big life-changing challenge that will tear you to shreds and then spit you out on the other side a better, stronger, more capable, more interesting person. But what you don't dream about is hiking for months on end through snow and blistering heat and relentless bugs and never-ending rain, battling injury and illness, all on some of the most treacherous terrain that the East Coast has to offer. So as someone who has successfully thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail after years and years and years of dreaming about it, I am here to share with you 10 more brutal truths about what it truly means to thru-hike the AT. And if you missed the first video, I'm going to go ahead and link it in the comments. And for more thru-hiking and backpacking content, don't forget to subscribe to the trek. Okay, let's get into it. First things first, when you think about thru-hiking a national scenic trail like the AT, you're probably thinking about this beautiful, isolating, solitary adventure, traveling through the woods and experiencing the joys of introspection and isolation. But in reality, what most people said was the highlight of their AT thru-hike was the people. Now, the AT is a busy, busy trail. The ATC predicts that about 3 million people step foot on it every single year. So if you're hoping to get a ton of solitude and time alone with nature out of your thru-hike, honestly, I might encourage you to choose a different trail. Or if you're section hiking, I would encourage you to choose the less busy sections or choose to southbound hike it or flip-flop in order to avoid the major crowds. But honestly, I agree. For me, the best part of my thru-hike was all of the amazing people that I met and the friendships that I forged. I just wouldn't have met those people if I hadn't gone out and hiked the trail, and that felt really special and unique to me. And it just so happens that I tend to be pretty extroverted, and I love chatting with people that I meet on trail and sharing about our experiences and what our favorite parts of the trail are and what our least favorite parts of the trail are. That was really fun to me, and I really, really enjoyed that. But if I did want to spend more time hiking on my own, I had to make a point of it, and often, even if I was hiking alone, I still ran into a ton of people. So yeah, if you are planning to thru-hike just for the solitude and the time with nature, I don't believe that the typical no-bow thru-hike of the AT is what you're looking for. Alright, so harsh fact number 2, Lyme disease is a real concern of thru-hiking on the Appalachian Trail. Don't let anybody tell you different. It is not fear-mongering, it is actual fact and something that you need to be concerned about. Now, I'm not trying to scare you. I just am trying to tell you that you need to be tick conscious, you need to do your tick checks, and you need to know what the warning signs are. Now, the states along the Appalachian Trail where Lyme disease are most often reported are Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey. Now, both New York and New Jersey reported 11% each of all of the total Lyme disease cases reported on the AT, but Pennsylvania reported nearly 30% of all of the Lyme disease cases reported last year on the Appalachian Trail. Now, for context, Pennsylvania is only about 200 miles of the entire Appalachian Trail. That is only about 10% of the trail, and yet 30% of all of the reported Lyme disease cases are attributed to Pennsylvania. That is not a small number. In fact, the 2 folks that I knew that got Lyme disease on the trail both got it in Pennsylvania. Now, for context, we surveyed about 400 AT thru-hikers last year, and of those 400 AT thru-hikers, about 20 of them reported that they contracted Lyme disease on the AT, and that means that is about 5% of surveyed hikers contract Lyme disease over the course of their thru-hike. Now, you're probably wondering if those thru-hikers were using any form of tick prevention, and that is a great question. Of that 5%, 3% of those hikers reported that they were not using any form of tick prevention, so that is good news. If you are using your picaridin or permethrin your clothes and doing tick checks, just doing all of the things that you're supposed to be doing to make sure you don't get a tick, you're likely going to be in the clear. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be aware. And again, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I'm trying to convince you that it is important to know the facts so that you aren't contracting some sort of lifelong disease or life-altering disease that you're going to carry with you way after you get off trail. So yeah, do your tick prevention. Harsh truth number 3. Now here is a harsh truth about the AT. all of the fancy gear in the world is not going to guarantee that you successfully finish your thru hike. And honestly, this one is not backed by any data. This is just how I feel about it. Now, if you head to an REI with your platinum credit card with no credit card limit, and you just start buying everything that you see and listening to whatever rep you're talking to and letting them talk you into buying all sorts of gear, and then you walk out of there with a $5,000 60-pound pack, you're not guaranteeing you're going to finish the AT. And on the flip side, if you go online and you drive yourself crazy doing all of the ultralight research and you spend thousands of dollars on the most up-to-date tech and the gear that everybody's saying is their favorite, whatever, you are also not guaranteeing that you're going to finish the trail. Now, to be clear, I believe it is incredibly important to do your research and know what has to go in your backpack and what you need in order to stay dry and warm and safe. But the fact of the matter is, I met so many people on trail who were using borrowed and old gear, and those people had just the same chance of making it all the way to the end as the folks who showed up and were showing off their fancy 8-pound base weight ultralight setups. Actually, more times than not, I liked the folks who were hiking with the old and borrowed gear more than I liked the people that were bragging about how light their backpack was. But on the flip side, just because you have the Z-Packs tent and the Enlightened Equipment quilt and the Durston backpack and the Gossamer gear trekking poles, all of that stuff is awesome, and it's going to give you a better shot at making it to the end because you're going to be more comfortable. But after many consecutive hot and hard and wet, muddy, buggy days on trail, it doesn't matter how light your backpack is, it's the mental game that is going to get you to the end. The folks who really want to be there and are determined to finish are going to finish. And if the only thing you have going for you is that you have the coolest, lightest new backpack, you don't really have much going for you. So to summarize, gear is important for staying alive, but it is not the only thing that matters. All right, moving on. Harsh truth number 4. Everyone says that they're going to journal every day or they're going to vlog every day, and the reality is most people stop doing that after the first few days. They realize that thru hiking is actually really tiring and really hard, and that a lot of the days look the same. You're getting up, you're eating, you're walking, and then you're going to bed. So after days and days and days of writing and recording the same things, people get bored or they're just too tired to edit or whatever. Because thru hiking is really hard and exhausting. The only people that really don't quit are trek bloggers. Sorry, shameless plug. But seriously, if you're thru hiking the Appalachian Trail next year and you're looking for a meaningful way to write about and record your hike and maybe share it with the world or friends and family, don't forget to apply to be a trek blogger. More information below. Harsh truth number 5. People are always asking, how do people have the time or the money to thru hike the Appalachian Trail? Seriously, don't you have a job? And the truth is, according to hundreds of AT thru-hikers that we surveyed last year, most of those people quit their jobs or they're retired. And it's true, some people take unpaid leave, or they take a sabbatical, or they work seasonal gigs, or they're freelance or entrepreneurs and they can take off as much time as they want. Some people are just unemployed or they're college kids. But the truth is, if you want to hike the trail, you're either going to have to wait for retirement or more than likely you're going to have to quit your job. And saving up a bunch of money and quitting your job is a huge risk. And more often than not, it is a privilege to take that risk. And to be clear, that is what I did. I was working a job that I loved, but I wanted to thru hike the AT more, so I spent a couple of years saving up all of the money, and then I quit my job, and then I hiked the AT. So yeah, if you're wondering how people get the time to thru hike, they make it. Harsh truth number 6. You don't need to be an extraordinarily experienced backpacker in order to start hiking the Appalachian Trail. In 2024, of the hundreds of AT thru-hikers that we surveyed, over 50% of them reported that prior to the AT, they only had 1 to 7 nights backpacking experience in their entire lives. Furthermore, only 17% of the people that we surveyed reported that they had more than a month's worth of backpacking experience. So while more backpacking experience does logically mean that you're likely more prepared to hike the Appalachian Trail, it still doesn't guarantee that you're going to finish it. Personally, I probably only had 2 to 3 weeks worth of cumulative nights prior to me getting on trail. So what I'm saying is, the harsh truth is that regardless of how experienced of a backpacker you are, it doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to finish the trail. And also, if you don't have any backpacking experience, that's great, because tons of people don't have it and they still make it to the end. So don't be discouraged. Harsh truth number 7. People tend to really overhype the idea of the 20-mile day on the AT. And it's true. Many hikers are going to consistently start hiking 20 miles a day by the time that they hit Virginia. But the truth is, your typical thru-hiker is not averaging 20-mile days. In fact, your typical thru-hiker is actually only averaging 13.8 miles a day. And personally, my average mileage was even lower than your average typical thru-hiker because I took exactly 180 days in order to thru-hike the trail. That means that my average mileage was about 12 miles a day. Now, of course, that includes all of the many zeros that I took. I think I probably took close to 30. I was too afraid to count by the end of the hike, but I'm sure that if you were to remove all of those, my average would be much higher. And that also doesn't account for the fact that by the time I got to Vermont, to New Hampshire, and Maine, I was typically averaging anywhere from like 17 to 22 miles. But again, like the numbers don't really show that, and it also does not matter. So yeah, don't worry about pace so long as you are not pushing yourself too hard, you are remaining injury-free, you are hiking at a pace that is comfortable for you, and you are going to finish before the weather really turns and Katahdin closes at the end of the year, then you're good. The only limiting factor is your physical health and the amount of money you have budgeted for the thru hike and your time. So yeah, don't get discouraged by the folks that are bragging about hiking 20 plus mile days every single day. It doesn't matter. It's impressive, but it doesn't matter. Harsh truth number 8. You hear a lot about pink blazing, and if you don't know what that means, pink blazing is the idea that you are altering your hike in any way because you have some sort of romantic interest that you are slowing down for or speeding up for. That's pink blazing. But the question is, how common is that, really? Well, the truth is, of the hundreds of AT thru-hikers that we surveyed, 50% of them were single. That is a lot of single hikers. And from what I saw, a lot of the folks that I was hiking around were single, and there was a lot of mingling going on, if you know what I mean. I saw people sharing tents. I saw people sharing bunks at hostels. I saw people hooking up in hotels and in shelters. It was actually pretty gross. So anyway, I think depending on the crowd that you're hiking in and around, you're going to see either a lot of that or not a lot of that. I think especially around the younger crowd, you're going to see a ton of like the college age kids, you know, getting their kicks while they can get them. And it can definitely get pretty messy. And just to clarify, I had a boyfriend at home. I wasn't a part of any of this. But it does happen, so if you're single and ready to mingle and ready to hike, maybe hike the AT. Harsh truth number 9. A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson is arguably the most well-known and popular piece of Appalachian Trail media. In fact, there was a movie based on it that starred Robert Redford and Nick Nolte. But the truth is, of the hundreds of AT thru-hikers that we surveyed, year over year, they all agreed that A Walk in the Woods was the least helpful piece of AT media out of all of the pieces of AT media, including books and YouTube and articles and blogs, anything you can think of. Everybody agrees every single year that A Walk in the Woods is the least helpful. But funny story here, it was actually helpful for me because prior to me leaving for the AT, my parents had no idea that I was planning on hiking it. And they also really didn't understand what I did when I went backpacking, and I knew that they were going to freak out if I was just like, surprise, I quit my job and I'm leaving to hike for 6 months. So I showed my parents, without context, A Walk in the Woods, the movie, and my dad specifically really liked it, and he actually said to me at the end, he said, I could see why you would want to do this. That was totally unprompted. I didn't even tell him that I wanted to do it. So thank you to A Walk in the Woods. And if you're curious, far and away the most helpful AT resource was Far Out. And if you don't know what Far Out is a mapping app that you can download the entire Appalachian Trail, and it will give you the most up-to-date directions and comments about certain things on the trail. I used it, and it actually was my most useful AT resource too. And finally, harsh truth number 10. And this one might not be such a harsh truth, especially if you have thru-hiked the AT or have done this section, but year over year, out of all of the sections on the AT, the least popular section is northern Pennsylvania. And personally, I would agree. I liked the towns in that area enough, but if you've ever heard folks call Pennsylvania Rocksylvania, this is pretty much where Rocksylvania comes from. This area is just, it's Rock City. I really don't know how to explain it any differently. It is rocks on rocks on rocks. It is ankle rolling. It is rock hopping. It is bouldering. It is losing the trail. It's coming back to the trail. It's rattlesnakes under the rocks. It's basically everything that you don't want to have when you're hiking a trail. And frankly, this is also the area where I felt the least safe. I had a weird encounter with a guy who was living in one of the shelters who supposedly was taking photos of hikers and then like photoshopping them and posting them on Facebook. And like not in a flattering way. He was like photoshopping their heads onto like just really inappropriate stuff. And also, when we hiked into Duncannon, supposedly there was a guy who was standing on the bridge right as you get into town who was harassing female hikers, trying to get them to come stay at his house. And he's not a hostel. He was just some random dude just trying to get female hikers to come stay at his place. There was also supposedly a guy who was going around slashing water caches in this area, which sucks because especially when I hiked through, it was super hot and the water was few and far in between, and I really could have used those water caches if they didn't, get slashed and poured out by this random guy. So yeah, there was just a lot of weird stuff going on in northern Pennsylvania. So yeah, my least favorite section of Trail 2. And arguably one of my favorite points of the trail was finally hiking past all of the rocks. But bonus harsh truth, the thing that nobody tells you is that the rocks continue into New Jersey. Sorry. Alright guys, that is 10 more harsh truths about the Appalachian Trail. I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Did I leave some stuff out? Do you think that maybe I was a bit too harsh? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up or share it with a friend. And if you want to see more videos about thru hiking or backpacking or the Appalachian Trail, please subscribe. I'm Sassafras, and happy hiking.